Backrooms is the debut feature from Kane Parsons, and I was blown away. Every once in a while, a movie comes along that is so unique, it really sits with you. And that's what happened here. I spent way longer than usual just gathering my thoughts to make this a video, and it's for a couple of reasons. First, the world of the Backrooms is such an interesting and deeply unsettling place. It is a world that is new and familiar and different all at the same time. Second, to have a 19, 20-year-old director be able to make something like this is really incredible. And last off, it feels like the beginning of a sea change in Hollywood. And in this year alone, we have had 3 filmmakers come from the world of YouTube and have success in the box office without the full support of the studio system. At the same time, we have seen movies like The Mandalorian and Grogu floundering at the domestic box office, making the same amount in its first 3 days as Backrooms. On top of that, Obsession, which we talked about last week, has made more money each week over the week before, which is something that hasn't happened since E.T. So clearly we have a lot to talk about here. Obviously, the business of it all, but specifically, what makes Backrooms so interesting? Why is it having such success? And what you can apply from this film to your own, even if you are old enough to buy a beer. I'm Cory Baker, and this is my Filmmaker Perspective. For those who are unaware of how we got to this point, the idea of the Backrooms came from a 2019 4chan post where it explained the idea of the space known as the Backrooms. And the easiest way to think about it is you are playing a video game and there's a glitch and you find yourself in a broken part of the map. It looks like the world of the game you were playing, but it's not meant to be played and it feels broken in a way. The idea of the Backrooms has clearly caught on in internet lore, and Kane Parsons on his YouTube channel was able to use Blender to create the Backrooms on his own. I don't know about the original videos before watching the movie. Once I saw it, I could see the vision from even back then. It's fascinating because every so often something like this will pop up on the internet and a bunch of people will all think in the same terms of their film. One I got caught up in was the concept of Sonder, that people in the background of your life are the main character in their own. I tried to tackle that idea as a script a couple of times. I've seen Sonder on IMDb, and I have seen job postings for people trying to crew up their own Sonder idea, not to mention all the different social media posts that have remade the definition of Sonder over and over and over again. The reason you don't have a Sonder movie you can remember is because no one has cracked it. No one made it feel like a world an audience understood. Kane Parsons was able to do that in this movie. Nothing had to be explained. It just happens to make sense when you see it. And beyond that, for a long and endless series of rooms, there is an eerie sense that it would all make sense if you saw it as a blueprint or a floor plan. It reminds me of something I told somebody once about outliers in movies. You can do anything. There's no rules, but if you do something different, you have to do it better than anybody else, because if the outlier idea is not good enough, it will not carry the movie. This movie is a great example of this concept because the traditional movie aspects of this film are not particularly strong, but the world building, atmosphere, art direction, lighting, and camera work of the Backrooms is so great it makes up for a lighter story. It is nearly perfect example of if the outlier works the way it should, it will pull the rest of the film along with it. I'll go one above in the world of the Backrooms. The actual real world has such wonderful elements to it that it raises the whole thing thematically. There were a couple of shots in the real world where we see almost an artistic separation between the foreground elements and the background elements. And there's a moment early on when Clark is walking up to the furniture store for the first time, and the background almost looks like a video game, where it looks like a vibrant, separately drawn piece, and it has a weight and size that feels unnatural but beautiful at the same time. It's so slight, but it happens 2 or 3 times in the world, and it really subconsciously prepares you for the experience in the Backrooms. A huge tip of the cap to go to the art department in this movie. It's clear from the YouTube series that Kane has a natural eye for art design, but the combination of that plus the people who were brought in on the budget of this movie really elevated it to something special. Which brings us to our director, Kane Parsons, who for a feature debut, I think impressed as much as anybody in recent years. I know there were a lot of online chatter about how there's no way he directed this movie at 19 and there must be some shadow director that did the work. I would tell Kane not to take that personally. I feel like this is way more because people can't believe a 19-year-old was capable of it over anything personally about him. I have watched and listened to several interviews since seeing the movie, and if you take the time to do it yourself, you will realize that he is wise beyond his years, and he has such a grasp of this world that he built that he is fully capable of doing this. Much like I discussed with Curry Barker in Obsession last week, one of the most exceptional things about this movie is just how expensive it looks over what the budget was. There's a difference between $750,000 and $10 million, but there's also a big difference between what these movies ended up being. Also, the cost of the cast on Backrooms was surely higher, since the top of the call sheet for this movie are all actors we've seen in large movies before. The idea that a 19-year-old is not capable is a thought that isn't out of pocket. In the world before 2010, it would have been hard for anyone to self-teach and learn enough that they could be on the level that Kane is now. When I started my filmmaking journey, it was after I'd already gone to undergrad, so the idea of going to school again, like going to USC or NYU or some prestigious school, didn't seem possible. By the time I did go to film school in 2013, it was possible to self-teach in a way that it wasn't before. My time in film school wasn't the 4-year undergrad experience, but it taught me enough of the broad strokes to be able to apply that into what I wanted to learn on my own. And getting hands-on with stuff and playing around and making things work without professional tools just helped work out the muscles you need to succeed when you get to the next level. I made a ton of short films after film school, but I also made YouTube videos that had more views than any of those shorts. Not 400 million views like Kane, but it is incredible social proof that his vision for this world was so finely tuned. We will see more directors like Kane as filmmaking becomes more and more accessible, but there is a second side to his success. He is clearly maniacal in making this work, between learning Blender and creating the worlds within it and mentally building out even more for the future. He is putting in the work, and it's hard, and that should be commended. There are going to be a lot of people who imagine the age of entry is going to get lower and lower because of access to more knowledge, but in the eyes of many, the expansion of AI as well. I think Kane is a good example of what hard work gets you, because AI can't be as good as this, and it can't be creative on the same level, and in the end, you need to have that talent and ability to get to the level you need to be at to compete. You can't be 80% of a major leaguer and be a major leaguer yourself. You can't compete. Since the movie is so specific to its concept, it's hard to judge what Kane would be able to do directing something else. But there were a couple of things that I noticed. First is that Backrooms doesn't follow a traditional story structure, and if you were to think out the plot in terms of bullet points, you would recognize it's lacking the elevation you would need for a more traditional horror movie. The third act in particular fell short for me. Even though I enjoyed the ending, I feel like the story had a lot more structure it could have made at the end of the movie pay off emotionally in a more rewarding way. There are just a lot of tricks you learn by the number of days on set, and most directors who are old enough to rent a car by the time they make their first feature usually had a lot of behind-the-scenes directing experience and just becomes part of the awareness of doing it. Ask any great director if they're better now or when they first broke out, and it will be now because of the knowledge gained over the years of directing. So every director feels the first effort is the low water mark, but when you factor in just how much younger he is than most first-time directors, it becomes a duality of being impressed for how good he is, but also recognizing that this is not his final form. I'll say this, all the pieces were put into place to allow for success. One that you don't always have the luxury of is a smaller cast, because many movies require so many additional characters to make the plot move forward, and Backrooms only has 5 major roles. From a management standpoint, a small cast makes planning so much easier, and it allows you to move faster because there are less scenes with less coverage you have to get. If you have a scene with 4 characters at a dinner table, That's half your day, at least. You shoot the master, you shoot maybe a 2-shot, then over the shoulder 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 2, then repeat the process with 2, then flip the world, and then get all the same shots for 3 and 4. Then any inserts or specials, and then you need to make sure the continuity is correct. It's a lot more than it appears on screen, because if you do your job properly, the audience doesn't notice. But every new setup, you get people getting up and walking away, getting a drink, going 10-1. Lights need to be tweaked, hair and makeup need touch-up. An actor has an idea that would ruin everything you shot already, but you have to politely talk them out of it. When you have Chiwetel Ejiofor in the back room by himself, just yelling into the void, it's so much easier to stay in the space and move quickly from one setup to the next. I thought Chiwetel did a great job in this, and he's always an actor that looks like he's prepared. And by that, I mean, you can tell in the choices he makes that he has put in the work to get here, and now he just let it rip. Like an Olympic athlete, like you put in thousands of pole vaults in your life, and now you're prepared for anything. It was great to see Renette receive again. I thought she was so fantastic in Sentimental Value, and was really impressive again here. I enjoyed the scenes they shared in therapy. They were really strong and really allowed a subtext to parallels the audience will draw from spaces we draw in our minds. Big fan of Mark Duplass as an actor and as a brother Duplass. Finally, Kat and Bobby were both great in moving the story along, but going back to the lack of traditional storytelling, it didn't really give Lukita Maxwell and Finn Bennett, the actors who played them, a lot of room to explore greater truths. I still enjoy what they brought, and I felt the movie was at its most exciting when Clark, Kat, and Bobby are in the back rooms. The other thing this movie had that made life easier is that it had a lot of producers who know how to make movies in the vein of what Kane wanted to do. When you have the support system up top and a good collaboration of voices, it just feels like steady hands. I could go on glowingly about the crew as well, because all over you were getting solid work from G&E, camera, art and production design. The sound is great. The visual effects are all excellent. I could really go on and on about the lighting in this movie, because with the aesthetic of the yellow fluorescent, it's naturally a very ugly space, and they still managed to make some really beautiful shots. And there is a lot of great leading light, which works both in the context of the space, but in the foreverness of the world. The big point of discussion right now in the film world is this a new inflection point, with the success of 2 low-budget horror movies, both helmed by extremely young directors, beating out a Star Wars movie in only its second weekend. This is something I have been on for a while, and I really do hope it's the start of something new. I talked about how Kane has advantages to self-teach that past generations didn't have. And for sure, that will open up possibilities that haven't been there for younger directors before. But also, whenever you have 2 people that have success so quick, it starts to make people think of New Hollywood in the 70s and the Sundance generation of the 90s. And sure, yeah, maybe. But just generally speaking, I have long proposed that every studio in this town allocate a certain pool of money and let executives and producers take a flyer on a low-budget project without fear of losing their jobs. Call it lottery money, because if you lose it, oh well. But if you win, oh boy. Call it $25 million and find 12 interesting filmmakers who can tell a story for $1 to $2 million each. On top of that, you get a new release in theaters every month, and if it doesn't perform, you have a movie that people have heard of on Peacock now. Like, everyone is terrified in this studios of making a recommendation that blows up, and now they're out of a job. So it's all safe calls with known IP and yada yada. That doesn't allow new voices in, and if you don't let them in, they will figure out a way around you. 3 big successes this year. All YouTubers. They can get people to watch their movies. They don't need all the infrastructure a studio has. Is this an inflection point? Perhaps it is, but I think there is still a lot left to be written on the moment. At the end of my long series of interconnected rooms is a place filled with the Leaderboard. I really found this movie fascinating, and it was something that will sit with me for a while. I don't think I'm alone here. I wish there was more substance to the story, but a simple story told well is fine as well. Clearly, Kane Parsons has a lot of planned for the future in this world, and I trust whatever he's cooking up, it's going to be fun like this. If I had to give it a score, I would give Backrooms a 7.7. For the first time out for 19 years old, I think this is a remarkable effort. Great work all around from the cast and the crew. Great work setting up everyone for success. I remember an actor telling me once, we appreciate a crew that is committed to what they do because when they show up, they just get to play. You set up the stage, I get to give into the moment, and I felt that around this movie. I look forward to more of it in the future. Hopefully not long in the future. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I believe I will be back with another Filmmaker Perspective next week, but I'm still trying to decide between Scary Movie and Master of the Universe, so if you have an opinion on that, leave it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here next week.